Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Hope you all are doing okay. In today's video we'll be talking about how to get your NHS employer to fund your master's degree or any form of higher education in nursing, because let's face it, higher education is not cheap. It is very expensive, but as we all know, it could be a game changer in your nursing career. So if you've been dreaming of pursuing a master's degree but you're quite worried about the cost, in today's video I'll talk about how you can actually get funding from your employer, NHS in this instance, because I've only worked in the NHS and I only have experience with the NHS really. So let's get into the video. So let's get to the why. Why would the NHS want to fund you, or why would they want to invest in you really? And I think the simple answer is that investing in you automatically helps the NHS as well. So there is funding and budget for staff education in the NHS, and investing in you as a nurse to pursue higher education also helps the NHS to achieve their goals. And I know for sure that the NHS also wants skilled nurses to take on leadership roles, advanced practice, management roles, and a lot more. Also, master's level education contributes to better patient outcomes as well as organizational growth. So the key takeaway is that it's not about what you want, it's about showing the NHS how what you want will benefit them and the patient. So the first step is actually doing your own research, do your homework to find the available funding opportunities. So I think, in my opinion, it is best that you do the initial research, knowing what funding is available, types of funding available. Having that information would actually help you when you're approaching your employer. So funding options may include the following, but they are not limited to this. I have an idea of about 3 funding opportunities in the NHS, but obviously there may be more, and I do believe there are more. The first one is the NHS Learning and Development Funds. I know many NHS trusts actually have like an allocated budget for learning and development for their staff. It's like an allocated budget. It could be based on a financial year, so I feel like there might be a reset after every financial year. I may be wrong, but from my understanding, that is what I think happens. There is a budget for every financial year for staff development and education. So yeah, that's a funding option. Another one I know about is like an apprenticeship fund. So if for instance, for the ACP course, like the advanced clinical practice course, which is a master's course, it's a master's degree program. It is a form of apprenticeship because in most trusts they offer it in such a way that you would work and study at the same time, so you still get paid your usual salary, more like studying whilst working really, everything combined. It's more like a form of apprenticeship. So there is funding for such apprenticeship programs as well, so you may consider that, or you could do more research about that, so that helps you when you're approaching your employer. The third type of funding I'm aware of is the Partnership Programs Fund. Again, this might not be the real name, like the actual name, but I know about this fund actually from my little understanding. So for the Partnership Programs Fund, certain universities, organizations, bodies, but mostly universities, can actually partner with an NHS trust. For instance, it could partner with a trust. These organizations, bodies, institutes, universities, they partner with NHS trusts to offer discounted or highly subsidized courses. So like I said, there are many other types of funding in the NHS, but these are the ones I know of, or that I'm quite aware of. I would actually recommend you speak with the Learning and Development Department of your trust. Speak with them and ask them what options are available for you, as regards funding. Again, you could also read your employer's policies, because it could be included in the policies, like the types of funding, when you can also have such fundings. Everything should be written in the policies. But if you do not have enough information on your intranet, you could obviously just contact the Learning and Development Department in your trust. So this will bring me to the next step, which is building your case. Yes, you have to build your case. You pretty much have to sell yourself to your employer. You have to convince them that this is going to be a great investment. and you just have to like market yourself, really let them know how it is important to you. But beyond all of that, at this point, it's beyond your own personal career aspirations. You have to include the team where you work, how this will impact your team positively. Like, when, say for instance, the knowledge you'd gain from having a master's or any form of higher education, how you can transfer the information to how you work in the team, transfer the knowledge, how this will impact your team actually in a positive way. But beyond even your team, how this would impact your trust, how this would, how your new knowledge, new information that you would gather, how it would impact your trust where you work, obviously, how it will impact them positively. Pretty much telling them what you will be bringing to the table after completing the course. So in this light, you would need to like create a proposal, like pretty much a proposal. I would say the first thing to do when you're writing your proposal is to ensure that your proposal aligns, or the course you want to go for, the master's course or whatever course you want to go for, ensure it does align with the NHS values or your trust values. So go online, go check for NHS values or objectives, actually the NHS objectives. Also go to your intranet or go online, read about your own trust objectives, their mission, actually their values, what they tend to achieve. Look for all of that, merge all of that, and make sure that whatever you'll be writing down as your own reason for wanting to go for the course, make sure it aligns with those objectives, those goals, those vision, values, and all of that. Make sure it aligns with that. That's the first step in getting your employer involved. Actually, make sure it does align with their values, like the trust values now. So I'll give you an example of how you can sell yourself and ensure that this course would bring values to the NHS. For instance, if you're applying for funding for, say, the advanced clinical practice, you could make it known that when you finish this course, when you complete this course, this would also help with reducing the shortages we currently have in the NHS in critical areas. So when you become an advanced clinical practitioner, you will help in reducing the shortages that we're currently experiencing, staff shortages now that we're currently experiencing in the NHS. So just make sure that it does align with the NHS mandate. So after ensuring that you align your goals with the NHS mandate or NHS objectives, the next thing to do is to emphasize in your proposal or your application that there will be return on investment. That is what every investor wants to hear. They want to be sure that there will be investment, there will be returns on their investment. I feel like you don't even have to be an investor. Whoever you are, when you're investing in anything, you want to have good returns. So make sure you emphasize on that. So I'm sure you're asking, how do I emphasize on return on investment? I would say you could mention the long-term benefits of having a master's or whatever course it is. I'm only using a master's degree as an example. Emphasize why it is important, but emphasize the long-term importance, the long-term benefits of having that degree. How is it going to benefit not just the patients, not just your colleagues, the NHS at large, on the long run? An example of that is to mention that you will take on more responsibilities when you complete the masters. You will deliver innovative projects. You will contribute to the body of knowledge in that regard. You would improve efficiency. Doing that masters or doing that course would also help in reducing patient waiting times, reduce staff shortages. There are several ways you can actually explain how they can have return on that investment. And still talking about the proposal, I think the third and the last thing I will talk about in that regard is creating a study plan. And I would want you to be very careful when you're creating a study plan, because you do not want to look selfish. So when you're creating the study plan, also consider your team's needs, the needs of the team where you work or the area where you work currently. consider the needs of the team. So when you're like drafting the study plan, make sure that you're not just thinking about yourself and the course and your own family or your own work-life balance. You're also thinking about the other team members. You're also thinking about your employer, really. You're thinking about your organization as well. So when you're like, developing a study plan, make sure that it is fair. You need to be as fair as possible and try not to be selfish. So for instance, if you know that Wednesdays, for instance, now are like busy days for you in your in your team or your department where you work, really, you don't want to choose that day. If possible, obviously if it is impossible, that's fine, but if possible, you don't want to choose that day as your study day. You want to be considerate to other members of your team, so you could decide to choose maybe a Tuesday or a Thursday. So when you're working out your study plan, you may want to consider choosing study days on days that are lighter in your unit. So when I mean lighter in terms of workload, so on days that you're less busy in your department, you could use those days as your study days. Again, for your own course, it may not be applicable. You may actually just need to be in school on those busy days, and that's understandable. But just make sure that when you're drafting the study plan, you're very considerate. That's the word. Make sure you're considerate, because at the end of the day, it's not just about you, it's about your team, it's about the patients, it's about your employer as well, because they're investing heavily in this as well. So you just have to be considerate and you have to be fair. Also, when you're like drafting the study plan, offer to share whatever knowledge you will gain from this course. Offer to share it with your team members when you complete the course. So this is also very vital. This is even part of the things you need to add to your proposal when you're like selling yourself to your employer. Let them know that at the end of this program, at the end of this course, whatever it is that I've learned, whatever it is that I gain from the course, I'm going to share it with my team members, to also help them grow. So let them know that you'll be offering whatever knowledge you gather during the course with your team members, with students, and that would also help you to be a good mentor, a good supervisor, and all of that. So now that you're ready to make the request, I'm sure you're asking, so how do I make this request? I'm ready, my proposal is ready, I've done my research, I've done my homework, I know the course I'm doing, but how do I make the request? The first thing to do is to speak with your manager. I get a bit upset when I see people going behind their immediate manager, like their line manager, going. So for instance, you have a band 7 and then you're going behind your band 7 to say band 8 or band 9 to discuss your goals. You should always speak to your line manager first. Speak to your band 7 first about your career aspirations, really, like, okay, in the next 1 year or 2 years I'd like to go for my master's. So first of all, discuss this with your manager. A good way to start the discussion, okay, so the second point is starting the discussion early, and a good way to starting the discussion quite early is to start mentioning this when you have your is it yearly appraisals or even quarterly appraisals. Start mentioning this when you do your appraisals. Your manager would always ask you what you intend to do, like your aspirations or your objectives for the following year. Mention this, like, oh, in few years time, or say next year, or if you can even be precise, say this is 2025, you can say in 2027 I would like to go for my master's. So they are also better prepared for your absence from work, in terms of staffing, in terms of everything, really. As a manager, you don't want them to become stranded when it comes to staffing. You want to give them enough time and enough time really to plan ahead and find someone that could either replace you when you're away, or just find a way to reshuffle the team such that the shortage would not impact, or your absence would not impact patient care or patient outcomes. So be very considerate. Make sure you do discuss this with your manager first. I would also say be very professional and very prepared. The worst thing that could happen to you is speaking to your manager or even someone in the learning and development department, and you have no clue as to what course you want to study, how many years it will take, like the duration, or even the cost of the course. You should have all these details ready, have all this information ready for whatever meeting you'll be having with your manager or any stakeholder, really, in this regard. You should have all the information ready. So you have to be prepared, because you might be mandated to attend meetings with, like in my case, I had to like attend 1 or 2 meetings, one-on-one meetings now with like the lead person in the learning and development department of my trust. So in the meeting, they needed to know the course, why. So besides your proposal, they would also ask you verbally, like why this course, how is it going to impact your work, and just interesting questions really about the course. So you should be ready and be prepared for whatever questions they would ask you. Your manager would also ask you, like, okay, how will this course benefit us, like benefit the team, and of course patient care, how is it going to improve patient care. And yeah, so you must have those answers readily available. And if you do not have them, you can always say you get back to them that you need time to do more research. But again, do those research first before even approaching your manager or whoever it is, the stakeholders. Do those research first, have all the answers ready before approaching the higher ups really. So I would say, for you to get the support of your line manager and the higher ups, you need to really show how this would benefit the team. So leave your personal career ambitions, leave it aside. We know that you want to have a master's degree, like you're dying to have a master's. We know that you're very keen on professional development, personal development. That's fine, but at this phase, focus on how this course is going to benefit the team, going to benefit the NHS at large. And this is the best way to get that support. Trust me from experience, if you want to get that support, let it be known that you're not selfish and you're not just considering yourself, but you're considering everyone, and you're looking at the bigger picture, not just you or what suits you. And yeah, let's talk about the elephants in the room. Yes, there could be rejections. I'll be lying if I'm sat here saying, oh, it's going to be very smooth, you'll be told yes, and everyone will say yes. No, that's a lie. You could be told no. You could be told no outrightly. You could be told no after so much reviews. So what I'm trying to say in essence is that be prepared for a no, be prepared for a rejection or rejections. Actually, they are not obliged to like say yes, because at the end of the day, they have to consider what's best for the team, they have to consider what's best for the patient, they have to also consider other team members. It's not just you. And they also have to consider funding. Is funding available? Because in the NHS, and I believe this may be the way it is everywhere really, funding is based on, it's like a first come first served kind of thing. Like it's based on how you've applied, if that makes sense. So they would always attend to people based on how you've applied, like when you've applied, and the time of the year also matters. So if they've like spent everything that's been allocated for that financial year to fund higher education, and then you come after they've spent all the allocated budget, they may tell you no. So a lot of times when they say no, it is from a genuine place. They do not hate you, trust me. It is not personal. It could be that there's actually no funding for you because of the time of the year, and they've exhausted all the budgets, because some people are faster than you, they've gone ahead to apply before you did. So it's not personal most of the time. It could also be because as per the needs of your team at that moment, they cannot afford to let you go at that time, based on the needs of your department or the unit where you work, or your team really. So based on the team needs, it is not a good time for you to go for a master. So don't take it personally. It does happen. You could get a rejection or even rejections, but what do you do when you get that what do you do when you get that rejection? Now, you can explore external funding. So you could consider taking student loan for your masters. You could consider self-funding. I'll go into details of how I self-funded maybe in another video. Maybe I could briefly talk about it. I did self-fund myself for the most part until my dissertation. So you can consider self-funding. You can consider external funding opportunities, like I said, student loan, university grants, scholarships. There's this NHS England scholarships as well. You may consider that. I know that for certain grants or loans, you need to be a permanent resident. So I kind of understand for some people who are like on work visa, that may be a bit tricky for you if you're on a visa. But if you're a permanent resident like I am, then you are definitely free to apply for funding when it comes to, like, say, student loans, university grants, and all of that. So you shouldn't have a problem if you're a permanent resident. But if you're still on a visa, you could consider self-funding your degree or your course. So what you could also consider doing is to split the cost with your employer. You could actually, so when they say no, especially if the no is due to funding, so if they say no because there is no funding for your masters, you could actually suggest that you split the cost with them. So you could split it 50-50 or whatever is comfortable for them, because that depends on the budget they have right now. So you could suggest to them that you're happy to split the cost with them, and let them get back to you and tell you how much the trust can afford to invest in you. Really, I think that's a good one to do. You could also, in terms of splitting the cost, you could even tell them, I'm happy to fund this number of modules. Are you happy to fund, say, my dissertation? Because, and then you let them see reasons why they should fund your dissertation. So you could tell them, my project will be about this, and make sure that topic is something that would like I said, something that aligns with the NHS objectives or your trust values. If you do that, I bet you should be able to get funding for your dissertation, because I did. And what I did is what I've actually just explained, ensuring that the topic of my project aligns with the values of my hospital, of my trust, of my employer, really. So that's one thing you could do. Another thing you could do is suggest bond to them. So what bond means is you could suggest to them that if they're able to fund you, you would not leave or resign from the job until a certain number of years post graduation. So you and your employer could meet at a point where you could say, okay, maybe 2 years, you would spend at least 2 years post graduation in your trust or with your employer. You're not leaving. You could say 3 years. I don't know. It depends on the terms and conditions. But yeah, because even in my case, despite the fact that my employer only funded my dissertation, I had to sign a bond that I would spend at least 1 year post graduation with in my trust. I would not leave. I would not leave the NHS. So I could leave my trust, but even if I'll be leaving my trust, I have to leave for another NHS trust. So for the next 1 year post-graduation, I have to continue working in the NHS. It doesn't necessarily have to be my trust. And I think that's the way it is with most funding from NHS. You will be told you could leave the trust, but you have to continue working in the NHS for a certain number of years. So suggest that to them, that you're happy to sign a bond and you would not leave the NHS or even your trust for a certain number of years. So the last option when you get a rejection for funding is to try again later. Like I said, it's not personal. It is not personal. Don't take it personally. Try again later. So if they say no in this financial year, try again in the next financial year. It's not that hard. Don't take it personally, like I said. So if they say no, try again in the next financial year, or try again when the needs of your team get better. So say for instance, right now in your team there's so much shortage that you don't even have enough people to work. You could try again when it's a lot better with staffing in your department, or try again when you're financially ready to, say, split the cost with your employer, or even self-fund, like fully fund yourself. So you could always review your circumstances and then do better next time. It could also be that with your proposal, it wasn't good enough. You did not eat the objectives that they required from you. So you can always try again later. It is not that deep. So if you've been rejected by your employer this time, try again next year. But like I said, if you start early by hinting your manager, say 2 years in advance, like start saying it like, oh, next year I'd like to go for my master's. Like I have started even hinting my manager about my next career, goal. And it's not even for this year, it's like for 2 years time. But because I respect them and I know that they need that information to also plan the team, and it's just wise to start telling them early enough of your aspirations. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're bound to go for the course. Like I could change my mind tomorrow and decide not to go for whatever course it is I've spoken to my manager about. So but just telling them shows that you respect them and you respect the team, and that you're considerate and you're fair. And I believe if you do that, you should get the funding. But again, if you do not get it, that's fine. Try again and revisit the issue another financial year, or tweak some things in your applications, and I believe that should be all right. Now to my personal story. I'm sure I've shared it before, but again, just so you know, when I was in theaters back in Essex, that was when I started my masters, and I kind of knew that they were not going to sponsor or fund. I keep saying sponsoring. I knew they were not going to sponsor. Oh gosh, I knew they were not going to fund the masters because it was not really applicable to my job, and the kind of masters that was more suited for my role as a theatre nurse then would have been an SCP course, which is the master's course. So the SCP is, I believe, the surgical care practitioner or surgical care practice. So the course is surgical care practice, and then when you're done, you become a surgical care practitioner. So that was best suited for my role as a theatre nurse. So the SCP is like the equivalent of ACP in the surgery world, so to say. But I wasn't willing to do that, so I kind of knew that they were not going to sponsor. And even if I wanted to do the SCP, there was like a long queue of people that was waiting to like apply and get funded. So that was not, I just knew that wasn't what I wanted. So I had to like self-fund for the most part. I changed my trust, I moved to Manchester, and then I did not even get funding right away because I just never thought of asking my employer for funding. So I was still going on with my masters, and then I changed department, transitioned from theaters to research, and I realized, oh, I could actually get funding for my masters. But obviously it was towards the end of my masters, and I had just my dissertation modules left, just 2 modules for my project. And yeah, I applied for funding and I was granted, and they paid £1,200 for my project. So be flexible. So that's the point of sharing my story. Be flexible. So if they're saying there's no funding, you can say, can I pay part of it, or can you pay part of it? Can we split the cost, or could you do 20%, I do 80%? There's always a way out. You have to be flexible as well. And again, I was so desperate that I actually did my masters in my own time. So for instance, if with the needs of your team they cannot afford to let you go and do a masters because of staff shortage, that's fine. That's part of flexibility. You could suggest that, okay, I'm happy to do it in my time. That would be more stressful because it means that when you get back from work, you have to stay up at night to study. But that's fine if you're really desperate. So I'm just saying this to let you know that there are ways around it. You could suggest to your employer how flexible you are, and I'm sure there's always a way they could fund you, either partly or fully, really. So I really hope this video has given you the confidence you need to approach your employer for funding for any form of higher education that you so desire. And if you've enjoyed watching, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to my channel. If you have more questions for me, please leave them in the comments. I love reading the comments and I love replying your comments. If you have other video ideas, leave them in the comments. I love reading from you guys. And yeah, I will see you in another video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye for now. Bye guys. Bye.